Hello students, this is your economics coach Prateek Bhasin back with the chapter Measures of Dispersion of Statistics class 11th. This is part 3 of that chapter. Today we will be discussing about standard deviation. So now what is standard deviation? Standard deviation is actually the positive square root of the mean of the squared deviations from mean. So, we will be discussing about the merits and demerits of the standard deviation, and then we will be moving on to the formulas and do some questions. So, we have some merits of standard deviation, which are: first, it is based on all values, because mean is calculated while calculating standard deviation. Hence, because mean includes the inclusion of all the values, therefore standard deviation also includes all the values. We have the second merit, which is it is less affected by fluctuations in sampling. So, it is not affected by fluctuations in sampling because it includes all the items. And then we have it is capable for further algebraic treatment. We use standard deviation to calculate coefficient of standard deviation, coefficient of variation. We also calculate variance by calculating standard deviation. So, it can be used in further algebraic treatment. Now, we have some demerits of standard deviation. First of all, it is very difficult to calculate. We will be doing some questions and you will find that it is very difficult to calculate standard deviation. It involves more calculations. Then we have two series having different units can't be compared using standard deviation. So, if there are two series which have different units, that is, one is weight of students and the other is marks of students, we cannot use their standard deviation to compare those two series. Then the third demerit is that it is not independent of scale. So, if I divide these series by a common factor, at the end I will have to multiply that number so as to calculate standard deviation. So, it is not independent of scale. Now, I have questions for you. So, the first question that I have on your screen is of an individual series. So, I have taken an easy question for you, so that we are able to understand it very easily. So, we have to calculate standard deviation from all the methods. First of all, let us discuss what are the methods of calculating standard deviation. So, on your screens we have the formulas for different methods for different series. So, we have 4 different methods to calculate standard deviation, the first being direct method, the next being actual mean method, next being shortcut method under which we assume to calculate a mean, and then we have the step deviation method where we divide the deviations from mean by a common factor. These formulas will be used while calculating standard deviation for individual, discrete and continuous series. So, the formula for direct method is sigma x square by n minus mean square the whole to square root. Then we have actual mean method whose formula is sigma bracket x minus mean the whole square divided by n the whole to square root. Then we have shortcut method, which is sigma d square by n minus sigma d by n whole square, then we take the square root of the whole equation. Similarly, step deviation method is similar to shortcut method, but we take out a common factor from d, that is why it is known as d dash, and then in the end we multiply it by c to get the desired answer. So, let us not waste time and move on to the questions for standard deviation. So, first of all, we have this question under which we have x, 10, 20 and 30. So, first of all, let us solve this question by direct method. So, let us calculate the mean first. So, the sum of x will be 60, the mean to the series will be sigma x by n, which is 60 upon 3, because the number of items in this series is 3. So, this will be 20. Now, let us square the values of x. So, we get 100, 400 and 900. So, the total to this will be sigma x square, that is 1400. Now, let us calculate the standard deviation. So, standard deviation is shown by this sign, and the formula according to direct method is sigma x square by n minus mean square. So, we have 1400 by 3 minus 20 square. So, the answer to this will be 1400 by 3 minus 400. So, 1400 minus 1200 because I have taken the LCM. So, the answer will be 200 by 3, which gives me root of 66.67, and the final answer to standard deviation would be 8.16. Let us also calculate the coefficient of standard deviation. So, the formula to this will be standard deviation upon mean. So, the answer will be 8.16 upon 20, which will be 0.408. Let us also calculate the coefficient of variation. The formula to coefficient of variation will be standard deviation upon mean into 100. So, this will be 8.16 upon 20 into 100. This will give me an answer of 40.8%. Now, let us calculate the variance. Variance is basically the square of standard deviation. So, we had this standard deviation as 8.16, which was the square root of 66.67. So, the square of 8.16 would be 66.67. This will be the variance. Now, let us move ahead and calculate this question by another method, which is the actual mean method. So, let us do it according to actual mean method. So, we have already calculated the mean, that is 20. So, in this question now, let us first write the question, which is 10, 20 and 30. Sigma x was 60. So, now I will be finding out x minus mean, which is, so mean is 20, this will be minus 10, this will be 0 and this will be positive 10. Now, let us square these values. So, we have x minus x bar the whole square. So, this will be 100, this will be 0 and this will again be 100. Let us total them out, the total will be 200. Now, let us apply the formula, which is square root of sigma x minus x bar the whole square divided by the number of items. So, we have the total as 200, dividing it by the number of items, that is 3, will fetch me the value root 66.67, and hence my standard deviation would be 8.16. Now, let us do this question with shortcut method or the assumed mean method. So, let us first write the series. So, we have 10, 20 and 30. We know that the actual mean is 20. Let us not assume that the mean. Let us assume 10 to be the mean. So, now I will calculate the deviations from assumed mean, which will be x minus a. Let us call this as d. So, I have 0, 10 and 20. Let us total this out, this will be 30. Now, let us calculate d square, which will be 0, 100 and 400. The total to this will be 500. Now, let us apply the formula using the shortcut method. So, the formula is sigma d square by n minus sigma d by n the whole square. So, let us put in the values. We have 500 by 3 minus 30 by 3 raised to the power of 2. So, while calculating this, we find that this will be 500 by 3, this will be 10 square. So, we have 500 by 3 minus 100. This will give me a value of 500 minus 300 by 3, which gives me root of 200 by 3, root of 66.67, and hence my final value of 8.16, which will be my standard deviation. Let us now calculate this using the step deviation method. So, under step deviation method, we have the question as 10, 20 and 30. Let us assume 10 to be the mean. So, first of all, I calculate d, which is deviations from the assumed mean, which will be 0, 10 and 20. Now, in this column, I see that I can take out a common factor 10 out of this. So, I calculate d dash, which will be d by c. So, we have 0, 1 and 2. Let us total this out. The total will be 3. Now, let us calculate d dash the whole square. So, we have 0, we have 1 and we have 4. The total to this will be 5. Now, let us apply the formula. The formula is sigma d dash square by n minus sigma d dash by n the whole square and multiplied by c. There is no square root on c. So, let us input the values. We have 5 by 3 minus 3 by 3 the whole square into 10. 10 is the common factor which we took out of d. So, the answer is 5 by 3 minus 1 into 10. So, let us move ahead and calculate this. We get root 2 by 3 into 10. Root 2 by 3 is 0.67 square root into 10, which will be 0.816 into 10. So, my final answer will be 8.16. So, this was the answer to the question of individual series. Now, let us move ahead to the second question, which is discrete series. So, I have this question written here. So, we have to find the standard deviation from all the methods. We also have to find the coefficient of SD, coefficient of variation and also the variance. So, let us first write the question. So, this will be 10, 20 and 30. The frequency is 5, 3 and 2. The total to all the frequencies is 10. Let us first calculate the mean. So, we take fx, which will be 50, this will be 60 and this will again be 60. The total to this will be 170. So, when we calculate the mean, we apply the formula sigma fx upon sigma f, which will be 170 by 10, that is 17. Let us first use the direct method. So, we will multiply fx with x. So, we have 500, we have 1200 and then we have 1800. Let us total this out. This will be 3500. Now, let us calculate the standard deviation by direct method. So, the formula to this will be sigma fx square by sigma f minus mean square, the whole square root. So, we have 3500 by 10 minus 17 square. So, we have the answer 350 minus 289. So, it will be root 61 and my final answer to my standard deviation will be 7.81. Now, let us also calculate the coefficient of standard deviation. The formula to this is standard deviation upon mean, which will be 7.81 upon 17. This will be 0.459. Let us also calculate the coefficient of variation, which is represented by the formula standard deviation upon mean into 100. So, the answer to this will be 7.81 upon 17 into 100. So, my answer to this will be 45.9%. Let us also calculate variance. So, we know that variance is actually the square of standard deviation. So, we had this root 61, which was actually the variance. So, variance will be 61, that is the square of 7.81. Let us do this question by using the actual mean method. So, I have the mean which is 17. So, let me use this value. So, we have 10, 20 and 30. We also have f, which is 5, 3 and 2. So, we have the total of frequencies, that is 10. So, now we have to calculate deviations from the actual mean. So, first of all, let us calculate x minus x bar. So, we have the mean as 17. So, I will be using this value. So, we have minus 7, then we have 3 and finally, we have 13. Let us square these values. So, we have x minus x bar, the whole square. So, this will be 49 this will be 9 and this will be 169. The question is not over yet. We have to multiply these values with the value of f. So, we have 49 multiplied by 5 which is 245. We have 9 multiplied by 3 which is 27, and we also have 169 multiplied by 2 which is 338. The final answer to the total of this will be 610. Now, let us calculate the standard deviation. So, the formula will be the square root of sigma f x minus x bar raised to the power of 2 divided by sigma f. So, we have standard deviation equal to 610 divided by 10, which will be root 61, and hence my final answer will be 7.81 again. So, we have the same answer from both the methods. Now, let us move on to the next method, which is the shortcut method or the assumed mean method. So, we have the question as x, 10, 20 and 30, and we have the frequencies as 5, 3 and 2. The total to these frequencies is 10. Let us assume 20 to be the mean of the question. So, we have x minus a, that is the deviations from assumed mean, which will be minus 10, 0 and 10. Let us now find the square of these deviations. So, which will be 100, 0 and 100. Now, let us call this as d and call this as d square. Now, we have to find fd and we have to find the fd square. So, let us multiply d with f and then multiply d square with f. So, multiplying f and d, I get this as minus 50, this as 0 and this as 20. So, this will be minus 30. Now, I have to calculate fd square, which is 500, 0 and 200. So, the total to this will be 700. Now, let us calculate the value of standard deviation. So, the formula is sigma f d square by sigma f minus sigma f d by sigma f the whole square. So, we have the values as 700 by 10 minus 30 by 10 square. So, we have 70 minus 9, which is root 61. My final answer will be again 7.81. Now, let us move ahead and calculate the same question from step deviation method. So, under step deviation method, I will be using the steps followed here. So, I used 20 as assumed mean. So, I am making the same columns 10, 20 and 30. I have the frequencies as 5, 3 and 2. Then I have the deviations, that is x minus a, assuming 20 to be the mean, minus 10, 0 and 10. Now, what I see is I find out that 10 can be pulled out of this equation being common in all the values. So, I have d dash, that is d by c. So, taking 10 as common factor, I have minus 1, 0 and 1. This will simplify my question. I can also calculate d dash the whole square, which will be 1, 0 and 1. Now, I have to multiply f d dash and f d dash square. Let us calculate f d dash first. So, I have f d dash, which will be minus 5, 0 and 2, which will be minus 3. And now, let us calculate f d dash the whole square. So, I have 5 into 1, which will be 5, 3 into 0, which will be 0 and 2 into 1, which will be 2. So, I have the values as 7 and minus 3. So, the standard deviation formula is sigma f d dash square upon sigma f minus sigma f d dash by sigma f the whole square multiplied by the common factor, which is out of the square root. So, we have 7 by 10, 10 is the total of the frequencies, minus 3 by 10 the whole square into 10, which was pulled out of the d. that is the deviations from assumed mean. So, we have 0.7 and then we have 0.09 into 10. This will give me an answer of 0.61 into 10. So, this will be 0.781 into 10 and my final answer will be 7.81, which is again my standard deviation and it matches all the method. Now, let us move on to the next question, which is of continuous series. So, let me write the series first. So, I have 0 to 10, 10 to 20 and then 20 to 30. I also have the frequencies as 6, 3 and 1. The total to this frequency will be 10. Let us first find out the mean. For that we will require the m, that is the mid value. So, we have 5, 15 and finally 25. So, let us calculate Fm, which will be 30, 45 and 25. This gives me the total as 100. So, the mean to this question will be x bar equal to sigma Fm divided by sigma f. So, this will be 100 by 10. So, my mean would be 10. Now, for this question we have to calculate Fm square. So, let us multiply Fm with m. So, we have 150. Let us multiply 45 with 15. So, I will get 675. 25 into 25 gives me 625. Let us total them out. I will get 1450 as my answer. Now, let us apply the formula. The formula to standard deviation according to direct method is sigma Fm square upon sigma f minus mean square. So, this will give me an answer of 1440 divided by 10 minus 10 square, that is the mean square. So, I get root 145 minus 100, that is root 45. So, the answer to this question will be 6.70. This will be my standard deviation. Let us also calculate the coefficient of standard deviation. So, the formula for this is standard deviation upon mean. So, we have 6.70 as a standard deviation, we have mean as 10, this will give me the answer as 0.67. Now, let us also calculate the coefficient of variation. So, the formula to this is standard deviation upon mean into 100, which is 6.70 upon 10 into 100, which gives me the answer as 67%. Let us also calculate the variance, which is actually the square of the standard deviation. So, the number obtained in the square root is actually this variance to this question. So, we have the answer as 45, which is the variance to this question. Now, let us do this question according to the actual mean method. As I have already obtained the actual mean, which is 10, so I will be using this value. So, I have the class interval as 0 to 10, 10 to 20 and 20 to 30. Then I have the mid values as 5, 15 and 25. I also have the frequencies as 6, 3 and 1. So, now let me calculate the values, that is the difference between the mid value and the actual mean. So, I have m minus x bar because my mean is 10. So, the differences will be minus 5, 5 and 15. Let us square these values. So, I get 25, 25 and 225, which is 15 square. Now, let us multiply these values with frequency. So, I get 150, I also get 75 and finally, I get 225. This is 225 multiplied by 1. So, the total to this will be 450. Now, let us apply the formula for standard deviation according to actual mean method. So, this will be sigma f bracket m minus x bar, that is the mean, raised to the power of 2 upon sigma f. So, this will be root of 450 by 10, which will be root 45, and this will again give me the answer as 6.70. 70. This will be my standard deviation. Now let us do this question by another method, which is the shortcut method. So let me write the question first. So we have 0 to 10, 10 to 20 and 20 to 30. The frequencies are 6, 3 and 1. According to assumed mean method, we assume a mean. So let us assume the mean as 15. So first of all, I will calculate the deviations from assumed mean and call it as d. So I have minus 10, 0 and 10. Now let me calculate d square, which will be 100, 0 and 100. Now let us calculate fd and fd square. So let us multiply f with d and then f with d square. So we have minus 60, 0 and 10, and then we have 600, 0 and 100. So this will be minus 50 and this will be 700. Let us apply the formula. So for standard deviation to be calculated through shortcut method, we have the formula sigma fd square by sigma f minus sigma fd upon sigma f the whole square. So we have 700 by 10, which is the total of all the frequencies, minus 50 upon 10 the whole square. So we have 70 minus 25, which is again root 45, and the answer to this will be 6.70. Let us also do this question by step deviation method. So I have the class intervals as 0 to 10, 10 to 20 and 20 to 30. The frequencies as 6, 3 and 1. I have the mid values as 5, 15 and 25. Let me assume 15 as the assumed mean again and find out deviations from assumed mean. So I have minus 10, 0 and finally 10. Now I can see that I can reduce this d by dividing all the values by 10. So let us find d dash, which is d by c. So I have minus 1, 0 and 1. Let me also calculate d dash square. So I have 1, 0 and 1. Let us now calculate fd dash and fd dash square. So we have minus 6, 0 and 1. The total to this will be minus 5. And fd dash square, we have 6, 0 and 1. So the total to this will be 7. Now let us apply the formula. The formula is sigma fd dash square upon sigma f minus sigma fd dash by sigma f the whole square multiplied by c, which is out of the square root. So common factor was 10. So we have the values as 7. Total of all the frequencies is 10 minus 5 by 10 the whole square. So we have 0.7 minus, so this is 0.5, and when we square 0.5 we get 0.25 into 10. Now we have the value as 0.45 multiplied by 10. This will give me the answer as 0.67 multiplied by 10, and hence my final answer will be 6.70, which matches through all the methods. So I hope in this class you were able to cope up with standard deviation. I request you all to practice the questions of this part, and I will see you in the next class. Till then, keep learning. Bye bye and take care.